Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. I am V for Verbatim, and I am currently recording inside my closet. If you're new, it's really nice to see you, and if not, welcome back. This is going to be a redraw video, so stick around to the end to see a before and after comparison of each character. So I love statistics, marketing, all that jazz, and it seems to me that most people like shorter vids. My data is of course limited, but over 3,000 views, seems like there's at least a market for it. Now, I really wanted to avoid making this an art-centric channel. There's just a lot of drama I don't really want to get involved with, but I do draw a lot, and I think sharing it at least would help me improve and hold myself more accountable. I want to move past half-assed unfinished drawings, so I hope you guys don't mind seeing a bunch of terrible drawings in between a couple of good ones. God, I ramble. This is why my videos are so long, sorry. Let's get into it for real, though. So over the past 10 years or so, I've made hundreds of characters for this massive cinematic universe I was creating with my sibling. It's the kind of stuff you'd expect from Marvel, but if DC did it. Like all these ridiculous ideas I was probably on crack while making. War hamsters, purple ghosts that are definitely not demons at all, so many cat girls. War hamsters, alien Shakespeare, immortal gender non-conforming super geniuses, distance learning, war hamsters, all of that with a Harry Potter Order of the Phoenix style filter because it's taken so seriously. Like, you don't even know how hard my life is. I'm a cat girl, and I'm in a love triangle. So I'm starting a series where I discuss it all, or as much as I consider entertaining to laugh at. There's some stuff in here that's probably offensive. I was in elementary and middle school when I made this stuff. I didn't know the difference between right and a teenage girl transforming into a man so that she could have kids with an adult woman. Clearly some of this stuff is problematic, and for the sake of transparency, I will take this series as a place to reflect on my terrible life choices. So if you're down for that jazz, let's get started from the very beginning. This is a preview for my upcoming redraw of the main leads, but I'll at least lay down the basic plot of the story here for clarity. It was originally an unnamed story that I later decided to call Chicago 2020. It was going to be this story geared towards kids and teens about this team of toddler alien sextuplets fighting crime in San Francisco and later moving to Chicago in the 2030s. Very misleading, yes, because Chicago is not the focus of the story. But the story starts with the deaths of the characters at age 16 before flashing back to their origin story in early life. So it would be a story where the audience looks for cracks in the team's development over time, and kind of has this opportunity to figure out what happens leading up to their murder. I wanted it to be more like the audience is a little more proactive, basically. And no, murdering teenagers and children doesn't end with this story. Thanks a lot, FNAF, for making me an edgelord. I never really sat down and came up with episodes per se, but I've been drawing characters, especially for this one, since the very beginning of our cinematic universe. I came up with story arcs, major events later in the timeline, and as you'll see today, villains. Admittedly, the villain designs were from much later, so I have no excuse for how bad they are. Let's just take a look at the villains from the first half of the series to get a bit of an idea of what we're working with. Yikes. We're working on the first row today, and as a bonus, I guess, Sebastian Farnsworth. First, we've got Inferno, Voodoo, and Luck. They're toddler mercenaries, and I don't remember giving them powers. Moving on, Bubbles. I think she was insane or ditzy or something, and her power was Bubbles. 10 out of 10. And then we have this character. Like I said, I have a lot of mysterious or angsty cat girl characters, so nothing special. I do like the mask, though. Tectonic, he's fine, he can move rocks with his mind, which actually fits surprisingly well considering California has earthquakes all the time. His uniform isn't all that interesting, though. Tsunami, again very fitting for a California villain. She was a pixie that controlled water. Nothing else to her except she was Asian for some reason in this drawing. Here's where you know I was high on something, though. Hot Dog Guy. He was a monster in a hot dog man costume or something. And then we have Sebastian Farnsworth. Personality, butler with majestic ponytail. We don't have a lot to work with here, but I'm gonna do my best. For this redraw, I'm going to focus on these three things. story tone, character, and style. I have to remember that this is the beginning of a series geared more towards a younger demographic with a toddler hero cast. The characters need to be a clear threat, but I don't want them to be too vicious because they're fighting kids. The same philosophy won't be applied to other stories like this one. But in this story, the characters will evolve over time just like the heroes. Another thing is style and purpose for these guys. They were initially just supposed to be a baddie of the week style villain cast, but even if that is the case, they need to be something significant to their corresponding protagonists to be an actual threat. Maybe their power is the hero's weakness, maybe they have the same powers. Even more interesting, maybe a positive trait the villain possesses serves as a foil and a learning opportunity for our heroes. I connected each villain to one of the 6 siblings in a different way, so that I could develop the heroes a little too. I won't be going into specifics here, but they each have a different power and basic personality type. Hot-headed kid with wind powers, spontaneous goofball with emotion regulation powers, protagonist adventurer with light powers, voice of reason with plant powers, quiet kid with ice powers, and mysterious loner with a third eye. I also wanted to focus on giving each character a style that suits them. Tectonic be looking fine with those suspenders, but that doesn't exactly scream, I'm a villain and I control rocks. You'll see that this leads to various levels of success in the redraw, especially with Tectonic, but honestly I think just drawing the characters again gave me more time to think about how to better implement them. And of course, I tried to give them each more character, clearer connections to each other, clearer sense of who's more chaotic good or lawful neutral. As you can see, the outlines for these guys are almost done, and while I will be discussing the characters here, their new names will be shown at the end. And honestly, I would totally be up to you guys coming up with names as well, and considering those too. Let's start with Sebastian Farnsworth and how I rewrote him. He's the sort of butler, sort of mentor-father figure type to the 6 kids. His role is comparable to Alfred from Batman and Professor Utonium from the Powerpuff Girls, but I did want to change him up and make him a little more unique. He's sturdy but also childlike himself, so he humors the kids but knows when to put his foot down. He takes his role with a confidence, eagerness, and a finesse that I really wanted to emphasize in this drawing. So he's designed after this plushie called Speedy, and I wanted that adorable optimism to come through in his design even if he is an older character. His clothing was the first to change. I wanted him to look formal enough, but I also wanted something casual, since he's not just a butler. I gave him this 40s style look that I've really been enjoying recently, with the high jeans and the overalls. It has the added benefit of making him look more square, which according to basic character design, if I know anything, makes him appear more sturdy. Anyway, I also added these stains and burn marks onto his clothing. He's raising a bunch of superpowered children after all, he's gonna be a mess. But I complemented that with a more casual sort of stance. Like, it's a lot looking after these kids, but he's got it covered because he's as superhuman as them, in more ways than one. The face is where I really took his inspiration into account. I wanted to give him that birthmark over his eye to match the black of the fur. I made sure his eyes were 2 different colors. I also added that little hamster-like smile, but also like a more gentle, relaxed look to the smile. He had to be a delicate balance between looking human and somewhat inhuman, which hopefully comes through, but I'm not sure, so... He also needed to have that confident, caring expression that I associate with him. So I gave him this scruffy little beard and a ponytail. Again, he's meant to look energetic and on the younger side. And on his butler platter, we have little juice boxes for the kids. Snacks calm kids down like nothing else, and Sebastian would be prepared for meltdowns, since he's looking after 6 toddlers. He had a lot of character originally, which made it easier for me to come up with a design that suited him. Hopefully that really comes through in this drawing. Now to Tectonic. My rewrite for this character is a little bit more story-based. He learned over time that he had the ability to initiate seismic activity along fault lines, but he refuses to use his power on humans or anything else because he accidentally killed his mother by doing so. He basically taps into resonance and can only use that power to destroy. I imagine he's resentful of his powers and just wrecks stuff out of frustration. However, like the original drawing, he can take on a more nonchalant persona, and that's how I connected him to the heroes. Jackson, hot-headed as he is a free spirit, but is a lot like Tectonic, so my rewrite for him is that he'd idolize Tectonic despite having to fight him. Here, I made the villain's uniform more like Jackson's because Jackson's hero costume would be inspired by this guy. Really gives the uniforms and costumes just a little bit more character. This uniform also allows for better mobility, which would be important if your power can split the ground beneath you. I gave him more of a connection to the Catgirl too. I do love pairing characters together, especially ones that you wouldn't necessarily put next to each other. So I figured they could be a duo. They're kind of a mess though, because they're kind of a couple, but Tectonic isn't very lovey-dovey while she's super cuddly. Just a general lack of communication between the two. God, I struggled with the hair for this one. It took me way too long for such a crappy result. In that regard, I prefer the original, and I let that laid-back side of his personality go, so I could establish these two as messed-up lovers, but I can always redraw him later. I probably will, honestly. He was one of my favorites design-wise and personality-wise, so I really want to do him justice. Moving on to the Catgirl, the girl with the superhuman reflexes and stealth with this new version. For her, I just really wanted to emphasize the cat, which is something I will not be saying all the time. It's really what made her as a character, but moving forward, I will tone down the Catgirl for other characters. I swear, this is the only one. This character was inspired by these really cool kitsune and cat masks from Japan, but I made the face more cat-like and gave it to a white girl as a villain costume. Seeing it now, all I see is cultural appropriation. So I actually made her Asian here, or at least mixed, because the poofy hair complemented her bubbly personality. It's still a little questionable, so I might just change her hair again. I also made her a little bit on the fluffier side. It just made her look really cute next to her tsundere husbando. I made her look more like a tiger than just a cat here. Tigers can be beasts in a fight, and are some of the only big cats that like swimming. Clearly they're hardcore just for the swimming fact. I'd really have her take on those characteristics in this story. It would be fun to see her as this lovable marshmallow one second and then an unstoppable huntress the next. Lastly, I gave her a pointed tail. It's mostly meant to be a secondary weapon, but it has Manticore vibes that kind of confuse the drawing a bit. I'd either take that out in another redraw or just double down and accentuate the Manticore throughout. I keep mentioning another redraw, but keep in mind I'm recording this in hindsight. I've had a lot more time to really think this over, and I tend to be nitpicky. And now on to Tsunami. In my revision of her character, she's way more sassy and hot-headed. It's kind of become a cliche at this point to make the tiny character super hardcore, just done with everyone. And as a fellow short person, I approve of this depiction, and I will continue the tradition. Tsunami is a water sprite that controls the tides and occasionally works with Tectonic and the Catgirl. She lost her entire colony when a factory was built on their lands, and seeks vengeance against humanity. She's also the villain I paired with the quiet kid with ice powers, Matthew. During her first encounter with Matthew, she convinces him that she's a hero, and gets him to help her destroy stuff. Matthew goes through with it because A, he's a naive child, and B, he was just trying to become more assertive. In her drawing, I paired her cutesy dress and wings with her annoyed expression and disdain for everything. She's shown to be angry, yes, but I think it could be used for comic relief if done right, with her being this super radical social justice warrior. Last thing, it didn't really come across well, but I decided to give her flecks of white in her darker skin. It's a characteristic of this condition called vitiligo, which seems to be the result of enzymes breaking down melanin in the skin. The little bits of paler skin in reference images also reminded me of crests of ocean waves against the blue of the ocean, so I included that as part of her design, as well as the seafoam-esque floofs at the bottom of her dress, really trying to emphasize this water aspect of her design, in subtle ways. And now for the worst character, Bubbles. There's no fixing her. I tried, and the drawing ended up terrible. Since it's in California, I made her into this valley girl that hypnotizes people by taking pictures of them. The flash is what caused people to become transfixed. She'd be paired up with mysterious loner with a third eye, Memori, because Memori's third eye would be closed by the effect of her mind control. But she'd still be able to think for herself, while her siblings would be incapacitated. It would mostly be an opportunity for her to grow without that third eye. But here, I honestly didn't put as much effort into making her design interesting. She's just a valley girl that's actually under the effect of her own mind control. Her hair looks bad, her fingers look like they were chopped off. She doesn't have a lot of character. Let's just move on before I become even more depressed by how bad she looks. Hot Dog Guy is where the inner monster lover in me went to work, and he's now my favorite despite being one of the more questionable characters in this context. His story starts with Caroline, the optimist who regulates emotions. During a trip to a boardwalk with her siblings and butler father, she sees a man wearing a hot dog mascot costume and becomes traumatized by it when one of her siblings tells her that the suit fills the wearer's brain to the hot dog juice. They're like 6 or 7, so Caroline would definitely believe this and have nightmares about a hot dog man with a zombie beneath the costume reaching out to her so that she can take his place. Her powers are very finicky at first, especially in those first years, and her siblings would start to have the same dreams when her powers start to act up. They'd have to fight this dream demon monster thing and keep it from entering reality in all its hot dog glory. There would be apologies, a story about childhood trauma, and if this design became the final version, possibly an R rating. When I redraw this character, I'm gonna tone it down just a little bit, but he's still my favorite for now. These last 3 are a mixed bag. Again, they're child mercenaries that serve a villain organization called Phoenix, but I made the designs vary a little more and look more like something kids would actually be able to find or make. Voodoo's a girl this time around, and I really wanted her voodoo doll costume to look like an arts and crafts session gone wrong. She has little pins that she sticks in her victims that send electric charges to make them move in different directions. Because, you know, that sounds scientific enough. Lux, a tiny edgelord that wears an evil bunny mask to look cool. He's not as decked out as his villainous companion, but he does carry cherry bombs on him with 2 fuses that look like little bunny ears, and he has other carrot-themed weapons. And Inferno is a kid who wears a gas mask and controls fire. I didn't do much with his design admittedly, but he's the leader of the 3, and he sees them as useless idiots. I mean, fair enough, bro. One thinks rabbits are scary and the other's too busy with the glue gun to do much in a fight. Story-wise, Inferno would be paired with biokinetic Charlie, and all 3 of them would be paired with protagonist adventurer Lucas. His first encounter with these 3 would be when Lucas is center stage. He's that kind of kid that thinks he's the best at everything, so he'd go after all 3 villains at once to prove himself. He starts out as an arrogant marshmallow, as you can tell. He'd realize he can't just do stupid things to prove a point, and he would ask for help. Not only is this a potential learning experience for him, but it's also an opportunity for Jackson, his brother, to surpass him, foreshadowing later events in the timeline. Willow with Inferno would be more straightforward. She's kind of just a sweetheart that controls plants, and Inferno's a guy that loves to destroy things. She hears everything that happens to her plants, so hearing some villain destroying something that she cared so much about would help her develop a thicker skin, I think, which she honestly desperately needs if she's supposed to be considered a decent hero. So here we are, guys. We've got our 7 villains and 1 butler redesigned, and their names are Again, not all of these turned out amazing. Some of them, Bubbles, should die in a fire. But I think a few good things came out of this. Hot Dog Man is definitely my favorite of this group now. And Sebastian Farnsworth is one of the characters that I think I really want to write, just to have fun with a mentor character. But what do you guys think? Which one is your favorite, or which one of these do you think should be banished to the fiery pits of hell? If it's not Bubbles, you're wrong. Is there anything that could make these characters better story-wise? Let me know in the comments below. If you like what you see, go ahead and hit that subscribe button below. It's a great way for you to let me know whether this is the kind of stuff you want to watch, or just in general support for the channel. And I appreciate everyone that has subscribed and honestly anyone that's viewed. I appreciate it. I didn't expect much from this channel, so 3,000 views strong so far. Is more than I expected. But other than that, this is V for Verbatim, signing off until the next video. Take care, guys!